Welcome to our Care Compass project. This is our quarterly education series designed for those who are seeking training to learn about best practices in caregiving and those who realize that the caregiving journey is inevitable and want to plan ahead. We want to thank our sponsors for this program, Brookdale of Bowling Green, Golden Care Partners, BGSU Optimal Aging Institute, the Wood County Hospital and Ohio Living, as well as the Wood County Committee on Aging. Our session today is on planning caregiver resources and managing caregiver stress. Our first speaker we'd like to welcome from the Area Office on Aging of Northwest Ohio, Jennifer Forshey is a licensed social worker and a family caregiver specialist. Please welcome Jennifer.
Hi, I'm Jennifer, like she said, and I'm in the caregiver department at the Area Office on Aging. Hopefully I had mailed our caregiver smarts and our brochures and things, so hopefully you guys were able to get those today that are there. But those are great resources for caregivers that we provide to try and link you with different things that you might need. So let's see. This is just my contact information. If you're in need of any of our services, you can always contact me by email. You can call. I'll put the phone number and everything up there. If you guys got the brochures, that has it on there as well. So basically for the caregiver program, we service 10 counties. Lucas, Wood being where you guys are at, but we also do Erie, Sandusky, Ottawa counties, and then out in the west, we do Henry, William, Fulton, Defiance, and Paulding counties. So if you're in any of those counties, usually how ours goes is that whoever you're caring for has to live within one of our counties. Even as a caregiver, if you're not in one of our counties, but you're caring for somebody who is, we can still provide you services. So the caregiving services that we do provide, we provide information and assistance. If that's all you're needing is just trying to link you with community resources and different information, we provide that service. We provide caregiving counseling where we would have you speak to a professional counselor about any caregiving issues you might be having. We also do education and training. So we offer training through different agencies that we have do different trainings. We also do virtual educational series that we hold once a month, sometimes twice a month, where we have different speakers come in and speak about different topics that we hope are helpful for caregivers and the roles that they're doing. Then we also do provide respite care. So respite care for us is a temporary service that we do. We try and give caregivers a little bit of a break. So we offer different services. A lot of it depends on what's available in the area you're in, but we do try and do in-home respite, which would be a home health aide that would come in and sit with the person you're caring for. We do that usually up to 3 months out of a year, and we offer you a certain amount of hours to use within each one of those months. But the idea is to just give you as a caregiver a break. So giving you maybe 5 hours at a time so that you can just get away, do whatever things you might need to do, or just, like I said, to get a break. The other way we do respite is we do offer a stay at a facility. So we offer a stay at a facility of your choice. We usually do that up to 11 days. You don't have to use all 11 days at once if you don't want to. You can split those up. As long as we have funding money available, then we offer that service. So that's a great way if you're going on vacation, or maybe you're having, as a caregiver, your own health issues and maybe needing the person you're caring for to be somewhere so that you can deal with those things. And then we also do offer adult day services where we would have your loved one go to an adult day center. At this time, the only adult day centers we contract with, though, are Memory Lane, which is in Lucas County on Reynolds Road. And then we contract with Community Health Professionals, which is out in Archibald. So with the adult day, that's kind of a nice way to get a break, have your loved one go we usually do a day a week for a couple months, but that's a nice way where you have the whole day to do as a caregiver things that for yourself that you might need to do. And then we also offer supplemental services, so help with things usually like low-end medical equipment that maybe Medicare won't pay for. So that includes like shower chairs, grab bars. Occasionally we'll do ramps if that's needed. A lot of that depends on where our funding money is and how expensive that ramp might be to place. And then we also do on a temporary basis help with incontinence products. They can get so expensive, so trying to help with the cost of that as that can be burdensome. And then we also do our Caregiver Expo, where we try and give information to caregivers in one big group. We usually do that in November. For the last couple of years, obviously, we've been doing that virtually and having a speaker. They have not decided yet for this year how they're going to proceed with that, if they're going to do in person or virtual again. So hopefully they'll be announcing that as November gets closer. And then our Caregiver Smarts publication, we're actually working on our new one that should be coming out here at the end of the year, but hopefully you guys were able to get those that I provided for you. And then this just basically goes a little more into depth of which I kind of already did, just our free information, our assistance, our trainings. So for our program, we are a federally funded program. So everything we do off of donations. So some of the services we do are at no cost, like the counseling and the educational pieces. But to qualify for our program, basically you just need to be a caregiver caring for somebody over the age of 60 who's older and frail. So that could be just as simple as you're caring for somebody and you go to the grocery store for them and take them to doctor's appointments. You're a caregiver, even if you're not doing any physical care for them. And then if there is a dementia, Alzheimer's diagnosis, memory issue diagnosis for somebody who's under the age of 60, we can still step in and assist a caregiver who's caring for somebody that maybe has some early onset memory issues, as long as it's documented. And then we are, as a federal program, we're required to give individuals with greater social and economical needs and with caregivers caring for somebody with Alzheimer's or severe disabilities. But for ours, there's no income limit that will make you ineligible for our program. It's just where that donation falls. And then we kind of discuss that as well. We're not going to deny services if donation we're requesting is not affordable. And then this is for our educational series. We are doing that virtually still, so you can listen in over the telephone, or you can, if you have a smartphone or a computer or a laptop or a tablet or something like that, you can listen in. All of our speakers are posted on our website. And if any of those are ever any interest to you, it does show you how you have to email me or Tracy, the other lady that works in our department, to get the login information if it's a speaker you'd like to listen to. But doing it virtually has been challenging, but it also has been nice because we used to just do that educational series in Lucas County, and we did one in Defiance County. So doing it virtually has opened it up to all our counties of caregivers. Whoever wants to listen is able to listen in. So that's been kind of nice to allow other caregivers that don't just live in Lucas to participate in that. So it's been nice. So the yep.
Is there recorded those educational series?
No, we do not record those, unfortunately. We were asked to see about doing that, but we haven't gotten the okay to do that yet, just because we're not quite sure where we would post them and how we would do that. So we're looking into it, but as of right now, no, they're not recorded.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions as far as the caregiver program? Any specific questions about the things that we
So just looking at it on a bigger spectrum, I can see how this covers these counties, but is there one that covers like the Finley, Hancock, all of those counties that way? Is there another group?
So all of the area office on agings have a caregiver program. So you would just need to find the area office on aging in those counties and contact them about their caregiver program. They all have one. We all do them differently. They might not run it the same way we do. They might not offer all the same services we do, but they should have some type of program that you can tap into. And like I said earlier, all the caregiver program is wherever the person you're caring for is living. So if you're in Wood and the person you're caring for is in a different county, you would have to contact that area office on aging. Any other questions? Okay, the next slides I just put in here, just they're not the caregiver program, but they are other things that the area office on aging does do, just, you know, in case you have things that maybe the caregiver program can't help with. So I'll just quickly go over those. Our Aging and Disability Resource Network is pretty much our front door, where if you call our main office, they're gonna have you talk to somebody in that department. But they schedule all our intakes, they give out information and assistance, they do our long-term care consultations, which are basically anybody can get those, where an assessor would come out and just give you as many resources that they can give you in the county that you're living in. And then one of the other big programs that we do over at the area office on aging, which is going on right now, is our farmers market coupons. So hopefully if you're eligible for those, you've filled out your application for them. They give out the coupons so that you can use them to buy the local grown fruits and vegetables at the different farmers markets. They do the applications in the mail, but also they have started putting those on our website. And you can actually fill out the application right there on the website. It's actually, when you pull up our website right now, that's the first thing that you're going to see is apply here for the senior farmers market coupons. There is, for those, you have to be over the age of 60, resident of Ohio, in our servicing counties. And then there are annual income guidelines that they do put on those applications that you have to meet. And then the other big program at our office is the Passport program, which is a Medicaid waiver program, where they come out and do ongoing care for consumers that are needing help to stay in their home to do personal care. For that, these are just some things that the Passport program can help with. They have case managers that help manage the case. They do personal care, homemaking, home delivered meals, transportation, adult day services, medical, all of that. And for Passport, it is a Medicaid waiver program, so you do have to qualify for Medicaid for that, and then you do have to meet a level of care, which basically means that you're needing help with your bathing, your dressing, those physical needs, you're needing help with those for somebody to come in and help you with them. And you do have to be over the age of 60. And then that, because it is a Medicaid waiver program, there are income and asset limits. So this is what those are for 2022. The income limit would be that $1,641. If it's higher, they do discuss the option with you of paying a monthly fee for that and what that would be. And then the individual that's needing the care, the asset limits are $2,000. And if there's a spouse living in the community, that's what the spouse can have. And as it says here, the spouse's income, family income is not counted towards that. It's just the person that's needing the care, unless both spouse, husband and wife are needing the care. They take that a little differently. But here is our main number. If you have any questions, you can always call our main number and ask to speak to somebody in our ADRN department. They would be the ones that would help you with Passport, referrals, anything like that. You can also call that main number for the caregiver program, and they would just send you in there. And then there's our website, the areaofficeonaging.com, and that will get you through to all of our programs that we do, has information on all those. And that also is where we usually have listed who our speakers are for our educational series. So that's all the slides I had. I mean, I do have the information for the educational series. I think I sent that out to you guys as well. We do those every month. So we are doing one here in June. Let's see, the next one we're having would be June 28th, and that one's at 6:15. And we're having somebody, the topic is unique caregiving issues with the LGBTQ community. So that should be pretty interesting. Does anybody have any other questions about the caregiver program? If you are a caregiver and you're needing a break, you're needing a respite, you're needing some supplemental services, you can just contact our office, and you'll probably end up talking to me. And then I'll send out our application for you to fill out. And then after you fill that application out, then we'll see what services we can get set up if you're needing it.
Jennifer, can you take a moment and share maybe an example of a scenario where you've helped someone get a little bit of respite, just so they have a better understanding of that? I know you explained all the services, but maybe you can do a little case study just so they can understand a little bit about how you help a particular individual without naming anyone.
Like how you use the service?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So right now, the biggest thing that we're doing is we have a lot of grandparents that are wanting to go out of state for graduations, college graduations for grandkids, high school graduations for grandkids. So, and they're caring for someone that might be, they're caring for a spouse that just can't fly anymore, or just can't be, they want to focus on that graduation and doing that. So what we do is we ask them to give us 3 choices of facilities that they would be okay going to, having their loved one go to. I helped a lady for a graduation. She was caring for her husband with dementia. And he just was not able to fly and do those things. Plus, she wanted to focus on her grandson's graduation. So she gave me 3 choices of facilities. We asked for 3 just in case, maybe that first choice of facility, nursing home, doesn't have a bed open. We want to be able to quickly move to your next choice, because we want to make sure that we're having them go to whatever facility you want them to go to. So then what we do is we just coordinate with that facility, do contracting and things like that, and for the dates that you're needing to go. And then her husband went to the facility that she wanted him to go to, her first choice, and then she's responsible for getting him there. And then we pay for however many days. This lady just needed 7 days. So having her husband stay at that facility for 7 days. And then when she returns, she would just she picks him up and takes him home. So usually when you're traveling like that, when it's something travel wise, we usually have you, if you're flying, we usually would ask you to have your loved one go the day before you're going, just so you're not rushed with doing all of that. But for a respite stay, it's not like you're going through your insurance. There is paperwork that the doctor has to fill out and things like that. But yeah, so we do it that way. We've also first stays, I have a lady that has to get a stent placed, and she's caring for her mother, and so she has to be in the hospital for a couple days, and then she's not allowed to move mom or anything like that for, I think it was just a week restriction for her. So having her mom go to a facility, had her go to a facility so that like the day before she was supposed to have surgery, and then for that extra week so that she could have some recuperation time.
Is there like a maximum number of days that you limit to for respite stays?
Yep. So for a respite stay, we usually will do up to 11 days. And so if for some reason, you're needing more than that, we do where we'll pay for those 11 days. And then if you need to pay for maybe 3 days privately, we usually can have you work that out with the facility so that you can do that. We also will work with most of the hospices if you do have hospice services coming out. And usually hospice will cover, normally they'll do like a 5-day stay at a facility, but say you're going out of town and you need 10 days, we'll also combine with them, have them do the first 5 days, and we'll do the last 5 days so that you can get a longer period of time. And then that way you still have 6 more days to use through the caregiver program that you can use throughout the year. The only stipulation for that is as a federally funded program, we get our money at the beginning of the year and we use it as we go. So sometimes by the end of the year, funding can be either low, or last year, unfortunately or fortunately, we helped enough people that we spent all of our money by November, and we weren't able to do services in November and December because we were out of funding money. So.
Yeah, we have a question in the back. I'll repeat it.
Okay, so we're dealing with hospice, that's the situation where she's bedridden. How does the transportation along
So the question was in regards to hospice. If an individual is in their home and they're requiring some respite, Is there transportation included to get them from their home to the facility for respite?
So normally we do not do transportation to a facility. But if you said you have hospice involved?
Yeah.
Okay, so normally if we're doing a combined stay with hospice and they're covering some days and we're covering some days, hospice will provide transportation to and from. Even though we're going to pay for the end of it, they'll still pay for transportation home and there. If you don't have hospice involved and somebody would be bedridden, potentially we might be able to work out where we would transport, but that would be on a case-to-case basis if we would be able to cover that or not.
Thank you. So I don't want to put you on the spot, but I had another question somebody asked in regards to travel. Say your loved one has cognition issues and you wanted to travel, and they could still be able to travel with you. Is there any other services where someone would have a travel companion? Have you heard of that, or have you? No.
No, I've never heard of that. That's not something we would do. Maybe an agency, like if you paid them privately, but that could get, I mean, you'd have to pay for, yeah, I mean, probably have to pay for them to go with you. You'd have to pay for their ticket. You'd have to, yeah, that could get pretty expensive.
Perfect, thank you. Any
Yeah.
other additional questions? Right. Well, I think that's everything. Jennifer, did you have anything else you wanted to share?
No, not unless there's anything else.
And everyone knows, maybe you want to just throw your slide back up on how to reach you one more time.
Yeah. So this one has our main number and our website. The main number can get you to the caregiver program. But let's see, I think I had one with my information on there too. Yep, that's my information. Oh, I don't have my phone number on there. If anybody's writing it down, my phone number is 419-725-6983.
Yeah, for some reason it didn't pop up on the screen.
Oh, you know what? I know why, because I don't think I pressed share screen. And usually if you're in Wood County, you're probably going to end up talking to me directly. So because Wood County is my servicing county. Oh, let me see. It's not letting me share it. Hold on just a sec. Let me see if I can get it to share. Ah, there it is. Now can you see it?
There you go. Yes. Perfect. Right.
All right, so there's my information. And that's my email, so that'll go directly to me if you have any questions. And then I gave you my phone number, and then I'll give you the main phone number too. Oh, there it is. There's our main number, the 419-382-0624. And that the main number, if you have a specific question as far as any of the services that we offer at the Area Office on Aging, that's the best number to call. If you have actual questions about the caregiver program specifically, I would encourage you to just call me directly. That way you don't have to go through the secretary. And there are quite a lot of Jennifers, so sometimes you don't always get to the right Jennifer. So if you have specific questions about the caregiver program, feel free to call me directly.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Jennifer, today from the Area Office on Aging. We're going to go ahead and take a 5-minute rest break, and then we'll resume back with our second half of our program. From Memory Care Lane Services, we have Sally Boland, who is going to talk and discuss caregiver stress and burnout. So we'll just take a quick little moment and pause our recording. Welcome to our second part of our Care Compass program, Navigating the Caregiving Continuum. This topic is on managing caregiving stress, and we welcome Sally Boland, the Executive Director of Memory Lane Care Services.
Thanks, Danielle. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen real quick. Okay, there we go. Good. Please meet while we're talking today. As Danielle said, my name is Sally Boland. I'm the Director of Memory Lane Care Services. We're an organization that serves Northwest Ohio and Southeast Michigan, and we provide caregiver services to people. Jennifer had talked a little bit about our adult day program that we have in Toledo. But we also offer a number of other services to family caregivers too. I'm actually a clinical social worker by training. We're a smaller organization, so I still work a lot with families on a weekly basis because there's only about 20 of us on staff, so we're pretty small. And I'm going to go back and forth just to make sure people on who are participating virtually can hear. But if you have questions, please feel free to stop me. I'm going to spend a little bit of time today talking about managing stress and maintaining health as a caregiver. I have a feeling that I'm probably preaching to the choir, and that many of you could probably add a lot to what I have to say here today. So, certainly welcome comments, questions, suggestions that you might all have as we talk today. I did bring some resources which you're welcome to take if you would like. Don't feel like you have to. If there is a specific question that you have, because I didn't bring everything we have, please let me know, because it might be something I can get to Danielle. So thank you so much for having me here today. So today we're going to talk about 5 things that caregivers should know that can help to reduce stress and maintain good health. We'll be talking about our physical and mental health, mindfulness practices, taking time for yourself, keeping a healthy attitude, and accepting help. So those are kind of 5 areas where that can be helpful for family members who are caring for someone. So, and I understand what shoes you're in. I have been in this field since the early 90s, so I'm going on my 3rd decade of providing services. But I also was a caregiver for my mother, who had a number of multiple chronic conditions, and she also had dementia. And I helped my dad take care of her, so I was helping to take care of her on a daily basis. And I have a 19 to be 91-year-old father who needs some help, although he is sometimes a handful. So I wanted to talk a little bit just about caregiving, kind of to get everyone on the same page. You probably know a lot of this already, But most older people grow up with families, so they usually have some type of family support. There's only about 5% of older adults who are actually in facilities. So I think a lot of times people think caregiving is being done in assisted living and nursing homes, and certainly there is a lot of wonderful care being provided there. But actually, most people who are aging are getting care in the community in their own homes.
Is this in Ohio only or all over the US?
All over the US. Yeah,
5%.
it's only 5%. Yeah.
Do we know the big number?
The actual number of people, no, I'd have to look that back up again, but I could look that up and send it to Danielle if you'd like to know. I'm sure it's in the millions, but again, when you think about our
Well, I'm
population,
thinking you're talking about the traditionals, right?
yes.
Not just the baby boomers.
Well, and some of the baby boomers too. This is actually a newer stat that we've got from Family Caregiver Alliance. Yeah. So we know that, for every person living in a nursing home, there's actually 2 living in the community who are really needing nursing home level of care. So Jennifer, we're talking about those services that Caregiver Support provides. There are a lot of people in the community who are meeting those levels of care. And many family members don't see themselves as caregivers. They're just helping out their husband, their wife, their parent, their sibling, their aunt, or something like that. So a lot of times when I talk to family members, they often don't identify as caregivers. So sometimes people don't really identify or use that term. But when I start talking about them and they're like, well, yeah, I take my mom, meals 5 times a week, and I take her to the doctors and I help her get a shower. But that's just helping my mom, where in actuality, that's actually what caregivers do. And a lot of times people don't identify as that. We know when able, spouses are most likely to be the caregivers for each other, as long as one is able to care for the other person. And we also recognize too, and something I think that's important to talk about with family caregivers, is that when a family member or a friend assumes a caregiving role, your relationship is going to change. There's a new role, a new dynamic that's entering that relationship that you may have had with someone for 30 or 40 or 50 years. And I think sometimes people don't always maybe necessarily recognize or think about that. And then that's sometimes when difficulties can emerge, because it's not only hard for the caregiver, but it's hard for the person for themselves too, to be in that accepting role of help. And so that new role, as you think about when you take on new roles in your life, whether you start a new job or maybe if you had a child, there's adjustment there, right? And the same thing happens when you're caregiving for someone too. And I don't think that role change that occurs is always recognized when people are talking about it. You're just kind of, sometimes you just kind of dive into it. So recognizing that role changes. We know that with adult children, 3 out of 4 older people in the US have at least one living adult child. They often have close ties between the children. Sometimes the children too are balancing work, their own children who might still be at home, and caregiving responsibilities too. So adult children are juggling a lot. We also know there's some cultural differences in caregiving. With some populations, they use more informal systems of care. Sometimes they don't always recognize chronic diseases. They might, just think like dementia is a normal part of aging. Sometimes language can be a barrier to accessing services too. So we know that this is true with caregivers too. So that's kind of the, talk a little bit about, where we are seeing caregivers today. One thing we do know is that stress affects caregivers, and stress can be negative and stress can be positive. And I'm sure that probably a lot of you have experienced this, but some negative impacts of caregiving, a lot of times we'll see caregivers, if they're not managing their stress and looking at ways to take care of themselves, it will impact their own health and well-being too. And so sometimes caregivers become very, very sick and ill. We see a lot of times that sometimes caregivers will also sometimes die before the person that they're caring for does because of the impacts of the stress of caregiving, or maybe they're not attending to their own health needs too. So it is something that we see a lot of times, and we see that as kind of a negative impact of caregiving. We know that caregivers have higher levels of depression than their counterparts their age. They often neglect their own self-care, where they'll push things off to the side because they have so much else they have to do for the person they're caring for. Sometimes stressful caregiving can learn to some negative behaviors, maybe, you know, a relationship become more argumentative. And what we also know is, and despite all these stresses, caregivers oftentimes don't utilize services in the community. Whether it be, you know, the services, I know that, you know, Wood County has a ton of great services. I mean, you just being at this class is a great example of that. Your loan classes that you have, the services that Jennifer talked about earlier, can be very helpful for caregivers. And sometimes just a little bit of a service can go a really long way for families. Some symptoms we see of caregiver stress is people might have denial about the situation that they're living in. With a person, they might feel angry and frustrated and irritable. They might withdraw a little bit more socially, so they might not do as many things as before. We see a lot more anxiety in caregivers and depression. That's very, very common. People might be more exhausted and have trouble sleeping, having trouble with concentration, or as I mentioned earlier, they might have some more health problems. So just some things, you may already know a lot of this already, but that, you know, we know that caregiving situations can be very stressful. At the same time though, too, I think sometimes there's positive aspects of caregiving too. Sometimes it gives people an opportunity to reciprocate. I know my mom was always very much a nurturer. And, you know, she was a teacher and she had 8 kids. And so she was just a very, you know, giving person. And, you know, I was grateful for those last couple of years that I had for her, because that allowed me to do some things, just me with her. You know, I took her out to dinner, you know, usually once or twice a week, and we would do, you know, do things together that, you know, allowed me the opportunity. And I'm grateful that, you know, now that she's since passed, I'm grateful that I've had those experiences. It gives us an opportunity to express our love possibly to someone in a different way. You might learn new aspects about a person by caregiving for someone. For some people, it gives them a new purpose in life, a new way to look at things. Sometimes it can bring families closer together. And sometimes just being in the situation of caregiving might cause people to think about, okay, what do I want for my future? You know, what do I think is important to me, or how do I talk to my family member about what we want to do for the future as I get older or as they get older, so that I know how to best care for them. So there are positive aspects, I think, of caregiving, and these can be stressors too, but we know stressors can be positive and negative and neutral sometimes. What we do know is some possible lessons of caregiving. Sometimes it gives us an opportunity to give up control, learn to give up control. It can provide opportunities to have new relationships. It allows us to uplift and give service to each other. It can, you know, provide us an opportunity to reduce some social isolation that we might be experiencing. So there's certainly some positive aspects of caregiving too. I don't know if you all would agree with all that, or if any of that resonates with you, but it's certainly something to think about. This is an interesting statistic. According to the CDC, up to 90% of doctor visits can be stress related. I don't think that's just in caregiving situations, but I think it just shows the impact that stress has on our emotional and physical well-being. So, as I mentioned, there is healthy stress. It's not always bad. Sometimes, you know, stressors can help us meet deadlines and help us get stuff done. You know I was stressed this weekend and I had to take care of some things, so my house got cleaner a lot quicker than it probably would in past days. Athletic stress can be helpful when you're working out. And it can help you respond to an emergency, you know, stressors can, or make a quick decision. But we also know, likewise, unhealthy stress can have negative impact on people with obsessive thinking, worrying about the future, maybe procrastinating, or feeling everything has to be exactly right or perfect. We do know, and I'm sure you've all experienced this, when we have stress, our body reacts to it in a lot of oftentimes physical ways. You might have trouble sleeping, but it also, when you're stressed, sometimes you can also, and we're going to talk a little bit about mindfulness, you can start to develop a relaxation response, which can help to really alleviate that stress and help you feel better. I don't know, Daniel, if you ever, I mean, you do the Tai Chi here, too, which is a great, example of a meditation and mindfulness exercise. I know there's a lot on mindfulness too. You did, yeah, that's great. And did you talk about caregiving too?
I wasn't in the class.
You did, yeah.
It was an 8-week course.
Did I just do something? Okay. We do know that health. So one of the things we talk about with managing caregiver stress is as caregivers, we do need to take some time to take care of our own personal health, because if we're not healthy, the person that we're caring for potentially is going to that's going to impact them too. So thinking about health and how you want to live, and do you have time to take care of your health? Do you have healthy habits related to eating and sleeping and making sure that you have enough physical activity? What kind of support are you getting, as caregivers? I know sometimes it's hard, and a lot of times it's one person who's doing the bulk of the caregiving, but are there some ways that you can bring in some other support is really, really helpful. And no one can really force you to live a healthy, rich lifestyle. So it's almost, as caregivers, and I know it's difficult to do because I've been in this situation, but figuring out little ways that you can make sure that you're taking care of your health. And so when we talk about caregiver wellness, we do believe it's holistic, and this diagram just kind of shows it's your physical health, it's your spirituality or your religion, your lifestyles and relationships, how you cope with change, and what kind of resources that you have to support you. But all of this helps to build, wellness, and sometimes it's just stressful looking at this, isn't it? Thinking how I'm going to manage all this. But I think even taking bits and pieces of each of them over time helps to keep you healthy and well. So. I know when my mom was sick, my dad was her primary caregiver, but one of my sisters and I, did the bulk of the caregiving, and there were certain things like he did not want to help her with the shower, and she quite honestly didn't want him to help with the shower. So my sisters and I took that role on, so sometimes trying to figure out, and then we also, did use our adult day program, which was helpful because, I really believe my mom needed a break from my dad as much as my dad needed a break from her, and so, just, bits and pieces. So we didn't get this all right. No one ever gets this all right, but little bits and pieces I do think you help you manage. And so it's just, as I mentioned, the small changes that can affect the small things inside your mind, the small things that you can do inside your brain really will help you experience better living. So. And this is just like, this is just a nice, nice saying, but life is like an ever shifting kaleidoscope, but a shift change and all patterns alter, and kind of a good perspective, I think, to think about with caregiving. So some things we should talk about with, as a caregiver, to take care of your physical and mental health. Healthy eating. There is a booklet in here that came from I think it's from the CDC about healthy living, eating. You're helpful to do that. You're welcome to take one of those. I know that the senior center has wonderful meals here, but getting your balance of fruits and vegetables, high quality proteins, whole grains, foods that are lower in saturated fats and empty, that don't have a lot of carbs and calories, salt and And we know that tea and spices and red wine do hold some interesting and helpful promise. So you've probably heard about, there's been some research with red wine. And so if you like to drink wine and you know, you don't want to drink tons of it and, you know, but there's, yeah, we can all have a glass. But so red wine, you can be, you know, having a glass of red wine maybe at night or in the afternoon, and you know, it helps with the there's some positive, excuse me, chemicals in the red wine, but it also can maybe help you relax too. So you're hitting two bits of that circle we saw earlier. So there's been some interesting research about red wine.
Can I add something to that?
Yeah.
When I was doing trying to get a business degree on the side after a full-time job, I had a math class. Actually, I have too many math classes. But the one thing I did research on is that, you know, wine does help you relax more than just that. It actually helps with the math. So
That's interesting. Yeah.
I think a lot of it. That's what got me into math. I would go to my class and I wouldn't tell the teacher by phone. So like, we should do something. If I had an actual class that I would take there, and oh my God, it was always stressful. And as soon as she stayed positive, it was over. So I started thinking.
Yeah.
Our places were better.
So,
I didn't make it 30, I made 65. So it doesn't matter.
thank you for sharing. And for the folks on that are participating virtually, one of the participants was just talking about, she did some reading and some research and study on the benefits of red wine, and she attests to it too. So, and it helped her in her math. So. And then you may have heard about, you know, there's some interesting research about dark chocolate. So, you know, so while you're supposed to eat healthy, you still can have a little bit of wine and chocolate. So, and that there's some real, there's anti-inflammatory, antioxidant properties in dark chocolate. We also see it in, which there's not a slide about that too, but in dark leafy green vegetables, so like spinach and kale. As well as like blueberries and raspberries and, you know, blackberries and things like that. So that they have antioxidants in it, which are very helpful for us and have some positive features to it. I also read recently coconut milk, which I thought was interesting. So one of the things to keeping healthy is preventing complex diseases, which is also very challenging. And as we get older, we tend to have more chronic and complex diseases. So figuring out ways earlier to prevent them, or at least keeping them mild so that you aren't developing severe chronic diseases. And just because you have one chronic disease doesn't necessarily mean that you aren't going to develop others. And so as caregivers, we really need to pay attention to our numbers, you know, and make sure our heart is working properly and our brain is working properly, and that we can all take care of during our, you know, annual physical wellness exams. And so we do know, as this kind of a repeat, that nutrition plays a huge impact in our brain health, and it's also for our heart health too. So a lot of times what, you know, you'll read is that what's good for your heart is also good for your head. So, which is nice because that means you don't have to have two different diets that you're following all the time, but look at for foods that are high in antioxidants and omega fats. So like your salmon, vitamin D and B are really, really important as you get older. So it's probably something, if you haven't had those looked at periodically with your annual labs, to make sure that people are looking at their vitamins D and B, and that you're also pursuing things mentally. So taking classes like this or other classes that are available through the Senior Center and learning new things are really helpful to keep your brain healthy. And as a caregiver, you know, keeping your mind sharp is very important to do. So there's also a diet called the Mediterranean diet. As you may have heard about that, that's had some really great research attached to it for heart health and brain health as well. So. And vitamin D is also very, very important. So a lot of caregivers will find they have vitamin D and vitamin B, both deficiencies, which have a lot of negative impacts on the physical well-being as you are a caregiver. So, and then you probably all know about the benefits of physical activity. So exercise exercising. I know one of the things I used to do with my mom is we would both walk, so I knew she was getting the benefit of the physical exercise, but so was I. And so she and I used to walk together. But we know that there's a lot of benefits to physical activity, reducing depression, which is more common with caregivers. It increases your energy, so you'll have more energy to fulfill your caregiving roles. It impacts, some of the chronic diseases we were talking about with heart health and diabetes. It does improve your balance and your bone loss that we start to experience as we age. And it will improve our mobility too. And physical activity has been shown to be a preventative. There's been a lot of really interesting studies around exercise and cognition. And as we get older, the benefits of exercise and cognition. That's just, so exercise is so good for you. It should come in a pill. Wouldn't that be nice? So, and this is just a slide real quick about the benefits of regular walking. I won't go through all those, but I think it's just kind of nice to be able to show some benefits of regular walking. So, and then this is just a quote from those who think they have not time for bodily exercise will sooner or later have to find time for illness. So, and sleep, that's another thing that's really, really important. And I think with caregiving, sleep is often impacted because a lot of times, maybe when people are having some chronic diseases, maybe with dementia, they're not sleeping really well. They have their days and nights mixed up. Or maybe if they're on hospice care, their nurses are in and out providing comfort care for people. And then sleep can really impact caregivers. And if you don't sleep, that's going to impact your health. You're more at risk for falls. And so, trying to come up with a sleep pattern can be really, really helpful. So programs like the adult day program and the respite program where caregivers can get a break, allows them to, take a nap. I know some of our caregivers, when they drop off their family member to the center, they say, well, I'm going home and just get a nap. So, and we promise we won't let the people sleep while they're at the day center, because they sleep at night when they go home. So, and here's some tips if you're not sleeping well. Light is something that impacts our ability to sleep in this time of year. The days are much longer, which is great, but you may need to adjust your bedtime a little bit if light impacts your sleep. Not drinking caffeine 6 to 8 hours before you go to sleep. Sometimes naps can be helpful for people, and sometimes they're detrimental. So you just kind of have to figure it out for you to figure out if a nap is going to help you sleep better. And then establishing a sleep to wake time. What a lot of studies show is usually between 6 to 8 hours of sleep is what people need as adults, and keeping on a schedule, whether you get up at, you go to bed at 11, you get up at 7, might be keeping that schedule is really important. Sometimes melatonin can be helpful for sleeping, but certainly check with your healthcare provider first. Sometimes drinking too much alcohol at night can impact your sleep. Think about the temperature of the environment when you're sleeping. Maybe trying a pre-relaxing exercise before you go to bed can help sleeping. If you're having, you think you might have some sleep disorders, it's probably good to check that out too. And exercise also helps with sleeping as well. So, and then another thing that there's been a lot of really wonderful research. So that's just physical and physical health is one of the areas with managing your caregiver stress. Another area is around mindfulness. So there's been a lot of research around mindfulness, which is a practice that can really help you manage your stress. And mindfulness can be done in a lot of different ways. You can do it by yourself. You can do it in a group. You can do it with just a small handful of people. There's apps out there. I've got on a slide with a ton of really good apps out there that you can use for mindfulness. So mindfulness is a coping strategy. It's kind of and you can use it not only in your caregiving, it's really, really helpful in your day-to-day life anyways. So mindfulness is a practice to maybe think about implementing in your daily life. And what we do know is, part of what mindfulness is really kind of talking about your mind-body connection that you have. So focusing on your breath, living in the present, allowing time, to meditate, really helps with caregiving and managing stress. So your body also realizes that, with your mindfulness practices, what we do see is that it reduces anxiety, it does reduce stress, and we do see that the research has shown that it does reduce physical symptoms that people are experiencing. So we also know it has decreased heart rate, blood pressure, oxygen, muscle tension. So there's all these great benefits of mindfulness. So this is just some tips around mindfulness. Mindfulness is used often, it's a daily practice that you must do first thing in the morning, at the end of the day. Sorry, I didn't see them pop up. I apologize for that. I'm looking up here. I'm not looking down here. Sorry about that. Is there anyone else I need to? Okay. And one of the things that we like to stress with mindfulness is it's a practice. So you're not going to always, you're not always going to hit it out of the park every day. So if some days you're not able to concentrate or focus as much as other days, that's okay. I think the process of getting into a mindfulness routine can be really, really, really helpful. So. And just regular brief practices of intentional stillness, meditation, just even taking, 20 minutes or so and focusing on your breath and releasing your muscles, and it can really help to improve negative mood and decrease stress. So, some practical ways to practice on mindfulness is focusing in on your breath. A lot of times I don't think we realize, and there's been some really interesting studies because we have moved so much into virtual programming that a lot of times we don't, our breath becomes really, really shallow when we're on Zoom calls and things like that, particularly if we're doing it all day long. And so really taking some time to do some deep breathing exercises, even if it's for 5-10 minutes, once or twice a day, can be a big, big benefit. But focusing on your breath and finding a time that works for you is really important. So you have some time to practice on mindfulness. This is the list of apps. These are free versions of that can kind of guide you through some mindfulness exercise. There's actually also we have a colleague at the University of Michigan at their Alzheimer's Disease Center, and she actually leads a weekly mindfulness group at noon. That's free, and you can just sign up for it, and you just join the group virtually. It's a really great program. But these are some apps you can look into if you're interested in some mindfulness practices. And Danielle has a copy of this. It was on the computer of this slide, so of this PowerPoint. So if you want this slide, I'm sure you can send it to people if they want it. Yeah. So. And there was an interesting study that was done out of a number of different universities that found that, even just after 4 days of mindfulness training, the study found that they had a really positive impact on individuals. So I think even just a short period of time, you could notice some positive impacts from mindfulness. And I mentioned it's called a practice. So, there might be days where you might be really focused, and there might be days where you're like this cartoon is, and you've got fret and worry, and you're worrying about the past and the future, but it's a practice. I have a colleague at work who always says, there's a reason why they call them practicing physicians, right? Because they're practicing, and mindfulness is kind of the same way. There's a reason why we practice it. And, you continue to work on improving upon it. So we talked a little bit about, and I know I'm flying through material because I have till 12:30, right? Yeah. Okay. We have 3 more we're going to get through. We talked about physical health and well-being. We talked a little bit about mindfulness. You'll have the slides, so I apologize for running through these. I actually cut this down by 30 slides, but I just had a hard time cutting stuff out. And then what we want to talk a little bit is about taking time for yourself. And I know, because I've lived this is easier said than done. But even if you can take time for yourself, just even 5-10 minutes a couple times a week, it helps to rejuvenate you. It helps you take that breath and refocus. So taking time for yourself is really important for you as a caregiver. So setting time, regular scheduled time for yourself to pursue your own interests, to get a break from the caregiving, can maintain your physical stamina, and remove yourself from the caregiving role. So because it's so easy to become consumed by it. So taking that time is really, really important. Taking time out of your day and just figuring out what it is. And sometimes I think being a caregiver is can be a thankless job. And so, recognizing, even if no one else does, that, what you're doing is making a positive impact, and thanking yourself for that is important. Jennifer talked a little bit about respite. I think one of the things that studies have shown over and over again is that respite can provide a huge difference for family caregivers, because caregiving typically isn't a one and done thing. It's a long haul. I mean, I did it for 6 years with my mom, and over the years it became more. And that's not uncommon. I mean, we have some people who have attended our day program for 12 and 14 years. Those families have been caregiving for a really long time. And so respite is really important. And respite is just kind of getting a break. And you can do that in a lot of different ways. We know it's often a temporary a release that can be planned, or it might be an emergency. Respite can be provided by informal caregivers or formal providers. It might be, you and your sisters helping to take care of your mom, but then also maybe a home care nurse is coming in and helping out too. It's often a cornerstone for caregivers to really help them continue through their caregiving journey. It reduces demands of caregiving and can be offered inside and outside the home. Caregivers in some studies have found that respite is the most needed service that caregivers need more than anything else. They just need that little break. What we do know for the caregivers is that respite helps with sleep-related issues, reduces social isolation, because people can get out and do other things. It improves mood, it lowers anger, it enhances life satisfaction, and it delays people going into facilities, premature institutionalization. So we also know that it lessens physical and psychological health problems. It gives people a break. It supports caregivers who continue to remain employed. So respite can often help family caregivers who are still working. Oops, I'm sorry. And it provides an opportunity for caregivers to take care of their own needs. Studies have shown too that respite care is particularly helpful for caregivers who are providing about 21 hours of care a week. But it's not just that physical hands-on care. So if you're spending, 5 hours a week preparing meals and maybe, a half an hour each day running to mom and dad's house, when you start to think about, it's every little thing that you're doing, those 21 hours come up pretty quickly. You're running to the doctor maybe twice a month, you're going to the grocery store. All those little things are related to caregiving. And that's why I think a lot of people say, well, I'm just helping my mom. Of course I'm going to help my mom. She raised me, but those 21 hours add up really, really quickly. But that's kind of the threshold a lot of times where people find, that's when I need a break. That 21 hours. It's interesting. They figured that out in the study. I'm always fascinated how people figure that stuff out, but I think it's helpful. And if you just sat down and added up, probably the number of the amount of time that you're spending, I suspect that most people are spending significantly more than 21 hours a week in regarding care. But it's helpful not only for the caregiver, but the person who's receiving the care. I really, just because you become sick doesn't mean you still don't want to have relationships with people, and you don't have roles in people's life, and you still don't want to feel loved. And, so all of that is still really, really important. And when used regularly, it can really help caregivers throughout their whole entire journey of caregiving. So there's different types of respite. Jennifer covered a lot of this, but companion services, personal care, homemaker services, short-term stays in nursing homes or residential care facilities, skilled care, adult day programs. But it also can be family members too. My daughter was incredibly helpful when my mom was, the last year of her life. She was home because of COVID, and she moved back home for a little bit, and she was a huge, huge help. And actually, I think some days my mom was happier to see her than me, so it was nice to see that. So, okay, so we've talked about physical well-being, we talked about mindfulness, we talked about, respite care. The next around is keeping a healthy attitude with caregivers, recognizing that, stress is just part of life. We talked about how it's positive sometimes, and sometimes it's negative, sometimes it's neutral. But recognizing just because you're a caregiver, you're not going to have stress. You're going to have stress. It's going to be a new added stress in your life. But you need to think about, okay, how am I going to respond to this stress? Because sometimes if you build up those coping strategies when you experience stresses, it's easier then to respond to them. Some things about, your attitude is sometimes you're going to have feelings that feel good and sometimes they feel yucky. And it doesn't mean that they're good or bad. It's just a normal part of experiencing those feelings. So recognizing those feelings that you might have as a caregiver and understanding them, realizing it's part of your role, can help you then manage those feelings a lot better. A lot of times we'll have, I'll talk with caregivers because they're resentful about something. Maybe they're the only one doing the care and they have 4 other siblings, and trying to, recognizing that and then working through it can be very, very helpful for them. Know that you don't have to be perfect. There might be times where you might lose your temper, or you might feel angry about something, but recognizing those occur and then working through them is really important. So some strategies, having someone to talk to that isn't going to judge you and just let you kind of release, can be really, really helpful. Making sure you have time for pleasure. So, drinking that red wine, eating that chocolate. I like to drink coffee, so I always try to, sometimes I would just, splurge and go get a $5 coffee at Starbucks, which, was kind of one of my ways to think about things. Building up a spiritual life, so that can kind of sometimes renew you, help you find hope and help you cope and manage. Recognizing your limits. We all have limits. And maybe thinking about them ahead of time might be really helpful. For my dad, he didn't want to do the showers. So, he recognized that was one of his limits. So, we figured out a way to manage that. We have a good friend who's since passed, but she always talked about with caregiving is what is it that you need to do? What is it that's nice to do and what's nuts to do, and kind of maybe looking at that list and putting your things into those buckets. Because then maybe the nuts to do, you don't do, and that's okay. Recognizing again what you've done well and being proud of that, and forgiving yourself, because we're all human. We're going to goof up. We're going to lose our tempers. We're not going to feel good about things, and forgiving yourself is really important. Humor. So, thinking about, can I be a pessimist about it? Or can I be an optimist about it? So the pessimist says the glass is half empty. The optimist says, go ahead and drink it anyway, right? We still got half a glass of something. So thinking about positive thinking, sometimes journaling, or just, having someone to talk to, even if it's for 5 or 10 minutes every day. I have a younger sister, and so there was my parents. They had 6 kids, and then I came along 7 years later. And then I have a younger sister after me, and she and I are really close. In this whole caregiving situation with her, I talk to her every day. And if I don't call her, she calls me. But, we've continued to do that since my mom passed, and we've really become a lot closer and good supports to each other. Sometimes starting a daily gratitude journal, because if you think positively, once you get the negative thoughts out and you can look at that journal and think positively about things, it helps to elicit more positive thinking, which helps us as caregivers as we continue to care for people. Maybe think about a personal strength that you have each day and how you use it. And sometimes just the real small stuff can really make a big difference. So small acts of kindness can have a big impact on people. Learning education is hugely helpful. I think there are a lot of educational materials, some reading things to think about that are really helpful, but education can be really helpful as you're caregiving. Laughter is really important, and laughter, so thinking about things in a positive aspect, finding moments of joy, having the opportunity to laugh can really help us put in a more positive framework. I know it seems joyful here. Every time I come into senior center, how sometimes you just go places and people just seem joyful and happy. I mean, my work is like that. We do some pretty serious stuff at work, but mostly what you hear is people laughing all day long. And so even though you can be in a very situation, you can still find moments of joy in things. So there were some benefits about laughter. This is cute. The old man laughed loud and joyously, shook up the details of his anatomy from his foot to head, and ended up saying that such a laugh was bunny in his pocket because it cut down on his doctor's bill. So laughter is important. I think this is really a funny thing. Your prayer for a stressful day. I want to thank you, Lord, for being close to me so far this day. With your help, I haven't been impatient, lost my temper, been grumpy, judgmental, or envious of anyone, but I will be getting out of bed in a minute, and I think I will need your help then, So sometimes even little things like that. I know sometimes I put, just little things on my mirror or on my refrigerator that I can read that just kind of, make me, I can read, every time I read this, it makes me laugh, and I've had it for 20 years. So this, flexibility, I think one of the things as a caregiver, I think one of the things that teaches us to become very creative and very flexible. So this is kind of cute, the yield sign saying to stop sign, you're too strict, right? So, and then, just realizing that, things may happen around you, things happen to you, but the only things you can count on are the things that happen inside of us, right? It's how we react to things. And we can't always control what happens to us, but we can control what we think about what happens and, how we respond to things that are happening. And that really, I think, can often make a difference for us, and particularly in our caregiving roles. And then the last thing I just wanted, so we talked about physical, mental well-being, mindfulness, right? We talked about respite care. We talked about a positive, healthy attitude can be helpful with coping. And again, I know I'm preaching to the choir, and you probably have lots of things you could add to this. And the other thing I think to help manage caregiver stuff, which I think is often very helpful, is accepting help. And so one of the things just to talk about, have you ever heard about the airplane story, what you do with the oxygen mask? Mm-hmm. And what is it that you do?
Yourself first, then you help yourself.
Right. And so it's just that whole thing of I need to help myself and so that I can help others. So, a lot of times what we know asking for help, you don't have to go right to an agency, maybe you have family members, friends, people from your faith community that can really all be part of helping to care for your mom. I know my mom's sister was hugely helpful. She would come once or twice a month and just spend the day with my mom, and my mom lit up from that because the two of them were so close. But I know that was help for my dad, and it was as a child, I was glad to see that she was spending time with her sister. So, oftentimes reaching out to family members, I think sometimes that's hard to do because you don't want to burden people, and you're gonna have some people that tell you no, or I can't, or I'm too busy, but that might just mean then look for someone else, there might be other people. A lot of my siblings live far away, so it wasn't realistic for them to come home, but, to help out. And so we had to kind of dig around and find some other people. But there are lots of people that will help out there. I think a lot of times we find husbands find it hard to ask for help. And a lot of times, we'll get calls from the adult children who live 3 sites away because dad's in the hospital, and and he just really hadn't shared what was going on at home. And so and then by then it really things have started to snowball, and sometimes then people have to make decisions they necessarily might not have made. And then sometimes I think maybe with families, what you want someone to do and what they're able to do are 2 different things. And so really navigating and having those honest discussions with them about what it is that they can and can't do. Sometimes we've heard from families that, I really want my brother or my sister to come and stay with my mom, but they can't. But are there other things that you're having to deal with that maybe they're willing to do? Maybe they can or they don't feel like they can. So sometimes we've worked with families and maybe one of the other siblings pays all the bills, or they go to all the doctor's appointments, or they take care of the legal issues, or they cut the grass, and so there's other ways to involve people. We all have different thresholds and capacities to do things. And so, and it's really hard to do, but overlooking that and finding people's strengths, and so that they can, like, I hate the grocery shop. And so if I, having someone do my grocery shopping, which might be really fun for some people, it's painful for me. I do it only when, like, my refrigerator is bare. And so, sometimes finding ways to engage people because they might not always be able to do the care. And even though that's hard, that was, I think, can be a struggle for families. Working through that can still help to provide some help for caregivers, particularly, when you're in a long haul of 2 to 5 to 10 years of caregiving. So, and just because someone tells you no once doesn't mean you can't ask them again. So all they can do is tell you no. So, and that, I think as caregivers, just to remember, as humans, we need to have friendships and we need to have contact. And so not, asking for help is also making sure you're not self-isolating too. So. Some final thoughts again, good nutrition, physical activity, getting enough sleep, managing your numbers, managing your stress. You manage your numbers through your blood pressure, your cholesterol, your blood sugar, your body weight, your stress management through spiritual practices, mindfulness, maintaining your social activity, all help you in your caregiving roles. And again, thinking about your perspective and how you look at things. You can complain because roses have thorns, or you can rejoice because thorns have roses, right? It's your perspective and how you do things. And the thing is this is really hard. It's not something that happens overnight. It's something that happens and evolves over time. But the more you engage in positive thinking and looking at things from a different perspective, really helps you to move towards having, a more positive experience with things. And, the love that you have in a caregiving role, those role changes that you have can be resilient and meaningful and, provide new capacities to do things that you may have not had in your traditional relationship when you cared for someone. So that's, myself, and then I have a coworker, her name is Cheryl Conley. She and I put this together, probably way too much information. I think but you're welcome to call us. I think if anything, just know that we're here. You know, we love working with the Wood County Senior Center, and we're happy to help with caregivers anytime that you need support. So, and I rushed through that, sorry. I don't know if any of this resonated with you, if you have any questions, any comments, anything that you would share.
And we'll open it up to the people online as well.
It's very interesting to say that husbands, they're very prideful, you know,
Yeah.
and all that, but I have more daughter-in-laws that have reached out to me for
For help.
questions and wanting resources, so it's even the sons too of the parents that
Yeah.
they're trying to care for, a lot of it's the daughter-in-law, and
Yeah,
they're like, yep, I need help.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, you bring up a good point, and, you know, the vast majority of caregivers all are primarily women,
Mhm.
and a lot of times they're the daughters or the daughter-in-law. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, very true. Yeah, Danielle has the whole PowerPoint, so you can, feel
Sure.
free to chop up bits and pieces, or you can have the whole thing. But I will tell you, our notes are on there, and I kind of flew through this. You know, you're welcome to, yeah, none of this is just, we're not real proprietary. We're not at all, actually. No.
Right, well, I'm going to take this opportunity to thank Sally for joining us today, and thank you for our Care Compass participants.
Helpful. I know it was a lot of information, so